Hey, this is A.L.McCarroll. I am coming at you from my desk in my room. And yeah, so last week we did chapter 15. This week we're gonna do chapter 16. And if you haven't already, you should go to my channel and you should start this from the beginning so you don't give away any of the story before you get into some of the last chapters of the story. All right, so previous chapter, they get fully into the bunker after they use the crystal powered gun to cut open the door. They're exploring. They're finding the dead bodies of the previous occupants of the bunker, and then they kind of split off into three different groups. And Guinevere kind of becomes a little obsessed over the commander's quarters because she knows there's a crystal there, and the draw of that is just intense for her. And then they get into the commander's bunker, and she is confronted by the Avenger-possessed dead body of the commander, who has a crystal in a box that is sitting on his chest. And all kinds of crazy stuff on from there. Well, the day that this is coming out is November 1st, and today is the start of NaNoWriMo, and this is going to be the first NaNoWriMo that I am going to participate in. I've got a whole new story, nothing for this universe with this trilogy, but I do have a short story collection that I'm working on that's a bunch of Avenger stories. But for NaNoWriMo, I'm going to write a whole new story, and so far the title is going to be called Drained, and it's going to centralize about a college girl named Zoe who is asexual but not really understanding of the fact that she is quite yet, and she is got a roommate. Her roommate is pansexual, very sexually active, and it's kind of around them and also around a certain type of alien invasion and how the two girls navigate through all of that. So that's going to be really interesting and fun to get started on. I'm very, very, very excited about it. Ah, yep. Oh, kitty cat. I got a kitty cat with me. Hey, buddy. All right, that's about it for right now. So with that, let's get this thing started. Chapter 16. As Guinevere ran out of the commander's room, she could hear a low creaking noise that made her stop in her tracks. She saw a door in the hall of bedrooms slowly opening as she did. A partially decayed woman's body slid out from the crack in the door. It began to shuffle stiffly towards her. The sight made her freeze in shock. This was a body preserved to be used by Avenger. A pained scream from the side marked men's was the only thing that brought her out of her panicked pause. The woman's corpse chuckled lightly as it caught her looking towards the bathroom. Just then another door opened. Two dead men had tumbled out into the hall in a lesser state of decay than the woman. They crawled up in an unnatural position and began lumbering down the hallway, quickly meeting up with the dead woman. The three bodies formed a line, blocking the way to the cafeteria and only exit. She wouldn't leave all her friends behind, so having them try to block her didn't matter. However, the sight did horrify and intimidate her. Finally, they all opened their mouths and spoke in unison with the hauntingly calm voice of Avenger. "Hurry up, Guinevere Matthews, or there will not be anyone left for you to save." She fired her gun in a line across the bodies, severing the three across their torsos. Their middles turned to dust. The remaining parts fell to the floor, making a disgusting wet sound upon impact. Seeing that they were unable to continue their march toward her, Guinevere ran into the men's side, and as she moved out of the hall she could still hear Avenger's voice yelling out to her from the three corpses' mouths. "Your friends will all die, and it will be your fault." Guinevere entered the men's room to find tall, broad, floor-to-ceiling lockers. The air in the room hit her like a wall, hot, humid, and smelling of rot. She could hear a man's voice yelling from another room just a few feet from her. The sound of his shouts were mixed with intermittent gunfire. She was on edge as she walked along the wall of lockers, coming to the first corner. She felt her hands shaking as she quickly stepped into the open area. A second wall of lockers created another sizable blind spot. The floor in front of those lockers had a trail of bright red blood that stood out on the white tile floor. Guinevere's eyes followed it to the corner of the lockers where she could see a pile of long, dark brown hair wet with blood. Just as quickly as she noticed it, it was pulled out of sight, leaving a bright red streak on the white tiles. She paused, feeling a new wave of panic come over herself. She felt like she would be sick as she remembered Robertson's wavy brown locks. Yet she needed to go forward. Maybe she could still save Robertson. "Maybe she's already dead. Maybe you could have prevented this." Her mind was reeling. Her feet felt like lead, but she stepped forward as quietly as possible. The man's voice in the next room rang out a loud yell, making her flinch. If she couldn't help Robertson, she still had others depending on her. She needed to protect them, if she could. She crept up to the corner, unable to find a way to step free from blood. Guinevere steeled herself for the moment when she would round the corner and face what was there. Then she quickly popped out from her hiding spot. She had barely any time to think before she acted. Her gun's light flashed. The image she saw before its blinding light came out was a nightmare of a sight. Robertson was dead, and two of Avenger's puppeteered corpses were attacking her. One was dragging her by her leg, its bony fingers dug deep into her ankle. The other was scratching its fingers into a large open gash in Robertson's chest. One of the corpses looked up before they were all three turned to dust. Guinevere had seen one of the corpse's features curve up into a disgusting grin. The view had stuck in her mind like an after-image. The ashes of the three bodies settled, and the dark ooze of Avenger fled the scene through an air vent in the ceiling. Gun still at the ready, Guinevere wheeled herself to turn away from the area and ran towards where she heard the man's voice and gunshots. The sounds were coming from a large open doorway. She could see to the right were lines of bathroom stalls on either side of the short hallway. On the left was a solid wall, and ahead of her, past the bathroom stalls and plain wall, was the steamy room with hissing showers. Guinevere could hear the hissing sound from earlier growing louder as she ran closer. She hurtled around the corner towards the bathroom stalls on the right. Between the sets of stalls, being backed into the far wall, was Fletcher. He was cursing and shooting at 6 corpses. One body in the back pulled itself forward by its arms. The legs had been left mutilated on the ground closer to where Guinevere was standing. They trapped him in the narrow space between the stalls. He was backed into a wall. Guinevere knew she couldn't use her gun to save him. It was too powerful and hard to use with that kind of precision. Fletcher looked past the group of the dead and saw her frozen in place. She could see he was exhausted, and she could tell by the look in his eyes what he had decided to do before he even spoke. "You gotta take the shot, Miss Matthews!" Fletcher tried his best to keep his voice brave, but it began to crack, and she could hear his fear. "I can't hold them back any more." Guinevere tried to aim the gun, but the muzzle shook as she did. She couldn't keep her hands still, and even if she could, the gun's beam shot too powerful and bright and wide to be able to control it from this far back. She didn't want to kill Fletcher. Her mind screamed for her not to kill him. Then he cried out, "Damn it, Guinevere, take the shot!" She thought of Robertson's body being torn into and imagined her being alive when it had happened. If she didn't shoot him, would they do the same thing to him? Guinevere looked Fletcher in the eyes and yelled out to him, "I'm sorry, Fletcher!" She pulled the trigger, swiping the beam through the group and arcing it around so she wouldn't leave any remains. The light was bright and blinding. It reflected off the metal doors of the bathroom stalls on each side of the small hallway. Once she finished, all that was left was a pile of ashes and a large opening cut into the metal wall leading into the main hallway. Avenger's ooze slithered away out into the hall. She assumed it had fled into the air vents as the other bunch from Robertson's body had. Tears rolled down her face. "You killed Fletcher," she thought in shock. She was nearly lost in the horrific thought till she had heard footsteps behind her. She quickly turned around, gun at the ready. Daisy flew past the locker area, the black box tucked under her arm. Daisy sprinted past her and the hall that held the bathroom stalls. Daisy yelled out for Brett as she disappeared into the shower room. Close behind her was Ryle, who noticed her as he rushed to catch up to Daisy. "Why did you leave the commander room?" She directed the question at Ryle, who answered with a shrug. "I'm not sure. Daisy said she saw Brett getting hurt in the crystal from that box. Then she just ran." They both followed Daisy into the shower room. The room was large and built similar to the bathroom stalls. Both sides of the room had several shower stalls that closed with off-white curtains that had faded and stained with age. The air was humid, and visible steam came from a few running shower stalls that had been left on since their occupants had fallen. Just like in the bathroom area, there was one long aisle that was much wider. The floor was slanted to allow water to run into the middle and down many small metal grates. At the end of the aisle, on the ground, lay the body of Laureate. A gunshot in his chest leaked blood out into the nearest grate. Brett turned away from an obviously distraught Maxim, looking confused at Daisy approaching him. "Brett, move away from Laureate!" Daisy shouted. As she did, Guinevere could see black ooze move up the open grate, traveling up the bloodline and entering Laureate's body through the open wound. "Avengers in him!" Guinevere yelled it out to the others to prepare them and to prepare herself as well. Maxim and Brett moved back away from the body. Brett positioned himself in front of Daisy. "If something happens, promise me you'll get out of here." Brett spoke loudly as he kept his eye on Laureate. Daisy gave his back a desperate look before responding. "No, I won't leave you." She leaned in, touching Brett's back between his shoulder blades. "Daisy, I love you. If I can save you, I will. Even if it's not what you want." Brett barked out in frustration, still watching the body. He directed his attention towards Guinevere, who was to his right side. "You promise me you'll get her out of here if the worst happens." Guinevere nodded. "I'll do my best to get her if you can't." Ryle spoke up from behind them. "Look!" They all looked at the body at the end of the aisle. Laureate's eyes had opened up. He sat up and scanned the room. Guinevere noticed his eyes had turned solid black. Avenger smiled a wicked grin using Laureate's face. Then Avenger spoke in his own steady, sovereign voice. His strange tone, combined with the shower's hissing, had her on edge. "Welcome, Guinevere Matthews and company, to one of my many resting places of my soul. I have tried to retrieve that piece," he pointed to Daisy, "that you have in the black box you carry under your arm. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in convincing the commander of this community to give it to me." Laureate's head turned facing each of them as Avenger continued. "Long ago I occupied the body of the cook and had him poison the food with strychnine, a poison once used to kill vermin. Once the residents of this bunker had died, I planned for the cook to take the crystal. Still, his deep, gluttonous desire for food was harder to control than I anticipated. He succumbed to the same poison this host body ingested upon my influence." He slowly stood up from the ground, and as he did she remembered how Laureate had eaten the pastry earlier, and Avenger must have pushed him to do that. The poison Laureate had ingested must have made him attack the others, just like the long-dead occupants of this bunker had turned against each other in their poison-induced paranoia. Avenger must have had this planned from the start. Laureate stood tall with regal arms out to his sides. Any semblance of his standard gestures was gone. He extended his arm and pointed to Daisy, who had a look of horror in her eyes. "Dr. Daisy Ray, you have a piece of my soul in that box you carry under your arm." Avenger's tone changed to the disturbing resonance of Laureate's voice mixed with his own. The words came out deep and slow, with a clear promise of pain. "Give it to me, and I can allow you to stand out as you always wanted to. You have been in Guinevere Matthews' shadow your entire life. I can help you become more renowned in the galaxy than she ever will." Daisy pursed her lips and glared at Avenger, gathering courage before answering. "No, I don't need you, and I won't ever give it to you." Guinevere could see his eye flinch as she spoke. Then he turned his attention to Brett, who stood in front of Daisy in a protective stance, his gun at the ready. Avenger contorted Laureate's face into an evil grin. "Brett Belust, how noble of you! What you fail to realize is that I am invulnerable. I cannot die, but you." Avenger pulled a handgun from Laureate's side faster than anticipated for an older man's aging body. He drew and shot at Brett in a matter of seconds. She watched in horror as Ryle threw himself between Avenger and Brett, taking the bullet in the middle of his chest before falling to the ground. The bullet had traveled through him and struck Brett in his shoulder. The only sound was the hissing of the showers. Avenger's voice broke the silence as he finished his statement, voice dripping with satisfaction. "You can." Maxim rushed to Ryle's side, checking his friend for signs of life. "He's dead!" he cried out in a whimper of anguish. Daisy was trying to check Brett's wound, and he was trying to push her away, yelling for her to run. Guinevere took in these small details as her world swam in her vision. Avenger had just killed Ryle. He nearly killed Brett and Daisy. The bastard just stood there and laughed manically. Avenger turned Laureate's face up to the ceiling as he laughed. It was enough to make her feel like she was going insane. From cracks in the walls and air vents, ooze blacker than the deepest voids of space slithered out. They joined with Avenger's borrowed body, creeping under Laureate's skin. His features began to change. The skin bubbled and undulated as he took form. Avenger's hue changed to a ghostly white. His hair turned black, and he became taller and slim. Laureate's clothes had changed into a dark, sleek black suit with black dress shoes. Avenger had taken the form she had seen in the dark underground church. This was Avenger in his entirety. If she had any chance to kill him, it was now. Guinevere prepared to take the shot. She took a deep breath and aimed the muzzle directly at Avenger. He looked down at her with a slight smirk as she pulled the trigger. The white-hot beam shot him directly in the torso. Avenger let out a pained scream. The beam of the gun, typically white, flashed solid black once, twice, and a third time. Then it stopped. "No!" Guinevere yelled, jamming down on the trigger with her finger, looking back and forth from her gun to Avenger. "It can't fall apart on me now," she thought through pure panic. Avenger's head was hung, and she couldn't see his expression. He began to quake with laughter. Avenger rose up, showing a wicked grin that spread ear to ear. He hadn't been hurt. "Guinevere Matthews, I thank you for freely giving me what was inside the 3 crystals in your gun. You have helped me more than you will ever know." "No!" she yelled. "You're lying!" She fumbled with the clip, pulling out from the gun to check the 3 crystals inside. Avenger turned towards the black wall. She tipped the crystals out into her hand. All 3 purple crystals were now as clear as any standard quartz. Avenger had absorbed the power inside of them, and she had delivered it straight to him. Guinevere fell to her knees, feeling the weight of the shocking realization. Her heartbeat hammered in her neck. She felt faint. She no longer had a way to protect her friends or herself. They were all now at Avenger's mercy. Guinevere watched as Avenger methodically lifted one arm into the air. It slowly filled with black ooze until it reached a thick, sharp point. He slashed the strange appendage through the air, cutting open a hole. She could hear real pain coming from him as he cut the opening larger. She could smell a putrid burning. He was burning off some of himself to create this portal. Guinevere could see a new place inside the hole he had made. There was a human woman, with her back turned. She was tall and slender, with long, straight black hair and pale skin. Avenger broke her observation of the open portal with his boastful tone. "I am leaving through this portal now. I am going to another time in your future, Guinevere Matthews. You and your group have gotten the furthest of anyone that has ever challenged me. You might even have been able to destroy me if you had not been so easily influenced." Avenger laughed. "The great Guinevere Matthews!" he mocked as the ooze left Laureate's arm, leaving from the shower room into the portal. "Just another pawn on my board." Laureate's body was becoming visible as the ooze retreated into the portal. "I might come back and move your piece sometime in the future." As he finished his words, Avenger's face pulled away, turning into a thick, dark ooze, and revealing Laureate's dead eyes. The corpse dropped to the floor with a sickening thud. Avenger disappeared through the portal. Guinevere caught one last look at the back of the tall, thin woman with the long black hair as the unnatural portal shrank and closed. Hey, this is A.L.McCarroll. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Remember to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, also turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. Don't forget to follow me on my social media platforms for updates. You can find the links in the description box. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned and take care.